Greetings and welcome to the Industrial Lens Podcast. Here we examine cutting-edge insider knowledge on industrial equipment, strategy, and trends so that you can thrive and stay ahead of any challenges, seen or unseen. Now, let's get industrial.
Welcome to the Industrial Lens Podcast. My name is Eric Hassan, and I'm sitting here with Joseph Leiden. Good afternoon, Joseph.
Good afternoon.
In honor of National Mental Health Month, we have a very special guest and topic for today. The foundation that we're going to discuss today is called 33 Forever, and our special guest today is Sara Bennett. She is a 33 Forever board member and serves on its educational programming chair. She is also the sister of the individual who the foundation was based on. So Sara is currently a high school social studies teacher in Asheville, Ohio for the Teays Valley Local Schools, where she's taught there for over 10 years. She's a graduate of OU with a bachelor's degree in education and a master's degree in cultural studies in education. Good morning, Sara. Thanks for hopping on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It is our pleasure. So, if you don't mind, to get us rolling, what is Mission, or 33 Forever, excuse me?
So 33 Forever is a mental health nonprofit, and we were established and created just weeks after losing my older sister, Danny, to suicide in February of 2019. We primarily focus on suicide prevention, but primarily what we focus on in our day-to-day is not just about impacting lives related to suicidality, but also depression, anxiety, any other mental health disorders. And really, we created 33 Forever as a 501c3 to honor her life and Danielle's longtime passion to help others. And so ultimately, providing hope, help, promoting mental health awareness. And ideally, we're definitely not the mental health experts. We're a family who had a huge loss. And if we can save one person from facing that dark moment that took Danny's life, and if we can spare one family from what we've endured, then for us, really, it's mission accomplished at that point. And we know that we've already done that. It would be wonderful if we could continue to reduce stigma related to mental health. And we also engage in some advocacy, support research, connect with our community. And those pillars really drive my family and our board.
Very good. Very good. Could you get a little bit more into and what does Mental Health Awareness Month mean to you? And if you could just expand upon that a little bit.
Sure. May is Danny's birthday month, and so she's always on my heart and my mind during May. But Mental Health Awareness Month for me really just means showing those affected by mental health issues that they're not alone and treatment is out there. Recovery is possible. And the most important thing I want to talk about is just this idea that feelings really are temporary. If you ever think about the most happy you ever were, it was fleeting, and the most sad you ever were, it passed. And so it's really just about normalizing that everybody has mental health in the same way that everyone has physical health. If we treated mental health the same way that we treat physical health, I think that all around our society would be profoundly improved, impacted for the better.
For sure. And I'd like to just define the term depression, and I'm going to read off of the 33forever.life website the definition. So depression is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Fortunately, it is treatable. Depression causes feelings of sadness and or a loss of interest in activities once enjoyed. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and can decrease a person's ability to function at work and at home. Sarah, would you mind just kind of giving a little background on Danny's story to kind of set the stage, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I would love to. And I appreciate you asking. One of the things that happens when people pass away is that eventually people stop talking about her, stop saying your name, feel nervous that people would be upset to tell her story. But it's one of my favorite things to talk about my sister. We're a year apart, and growing up, lots of siblings, big, loud household. And Danny was a bright and beautiful and outspoken woman. She always struggled with feelings of self-worth and issues surrounding how she looked and felt. And we always say that Danny wore a mask. She was charming and bougie, and she just seemed so much on the surface to have it all, but underneath, definitely think that there was just a dark passenger that she at times in her life had so much success treating. She was medicated and in therapy, and having somebody come to her house in DC to do private yoga. And she, at times in her life really was thriving in all, our perceptions. And ultimately, in February, she had a really intense, dark moment, and her depression took over, and we were stunned. It was the weekend that one of our nieces had been born, and so a time of great excitement for our family, including Danny. One of her last messages was, "I'm so happy." And it's just extraordinary how, our family has been profoundly changed since that weekend, since that moment. And I feel as though, and I hope that 33 Forever is helping us heal. And I hope that it inspires other families to turn pain into purpose and sort of walk her path. She loved to tell her story and help, especially young women. And I hope that we're energized by her spirit and her goals.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that. Could you describe one thing that 33 Forever, has done for you or the followers that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's normalized how I talk about my own issues. I struggled deeply and profoundly with postpartum anxiety after the birth of both of my sons. And it really gave me permission and motivation to speak to that. And so many moms have reached out to me since I've been so candid and continue to reach out. We get messages all the time, both on my personal and on 33's social about, hey, I'm having this symptom, or I thought it was just me and now I'm reaching out for help. I just feel Danny's story is so shocking in so many ways because of what a bright light she was, that it's helped others, sort of have shaken us all up and allowed us to share our own stories or our loved ones' stories in regards to mental health struggles.
No, that's great. And the stories you tell, I associate with exactly what you're saying. I'm sure a lot of folks do. Is there any way to, just from your experiences, what are the major symptoms that you see that our listeners can look out for, or ask questions, or there's certain questions that we should be asking our wives, our kids, our family, our friends, to assist with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we speak to at 33 Forever is, what is it feeling like? What are people saying? And what are people doing? So if you're noticing that a loved one is seeming more irritable or seeming more anxious or has a loss of interest in things that they used to love to do, if they're saying that they feel trapped or they just can't take it anymore, or they're starting to increase their substance use, sleeping way more or not at all, acting more impulsively or withdrawn. And ultimately, people who speak to, I want to harm myself or I don't feel like I want to live, this is not something that people are saying lightly. People who have suicidality, who then verbalize those things, or even like call people to say goodbye or give things away or say that they're just a burden, those types of things are warning signs that absolutely should not be dismissed. I am going to include for you guys in a document that you're welcome to put on your website that has suicide prevention lifelines for LGBTQ population, for veterans, for adults, and also a text crisis line. Think for people who are feeling low and hopeless, the message that I really want articulated to everybody is that there is treatment, there is hope, and through medication, therapy, and other interventions, you can get to feeling better.
No, that's great info.
Yeah,
and let's just say, Joe, or I know someone, acting like that. So what is the first step that I would need to take to approach someone who would need help when it comes to the depression symptoms that you just described?
So how I would personally handle it if I knew someone was struggling is I would, and I stole this line, I would seize the awkward. I know that it is an uncomfortable and new thing. I've gotten much better at it as I've practiced, but I start a conversation. I ask hard questions, I listen, and then ultimately link people with resources and advocate for them. If you have immediate concerns about safety, whether it be for yourself or others, obviously 911 there's no hesitating, but there's also the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which that number is 1-800-273-TALK or 8255. And it's not just I'm in immediate crisis. This can also be, I call them the dark and stormies. But if you're having those intense, overwhelming feelings, you can be connected with a crisis counselor that can give you some tools that are immediate and implemented and 24/7. So I think it's hard sometimes to say, hey, I'm noticing that you seem down. What's going on? Or however you might say it so that it doesn't feel more uncomfortable than it might already be. It really is a matter of practicing. I also encourage, and I've had to do this with my high school students, have you thought about hurting yourself? Are you safe? These are questions that are really ultimately life-saving, and I just have never regretted asking.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and there's no easy way to start that conversation, but it's definitely a critical one, and knowing that it comes from a good place is probably the best place to start. Could you as we talked, and you talked about reducing or eliminating the stigma around mental health, as mental health awareness becomes more prevalent, what are you seeing companies do to support their employees in times of mental health? Do you have any examples or best practices that you could cite?
Yes. So the first thing I want to say is that you guys are rock stars for asking that question. I think that is the starting point for all employers and companies to say, what can I do? Right? What can we do? And obviously here at 33 Forever, our board, we're not the mental health experts. We're a family who want to prevent other families from experiencing this type of loss. But we do have a professional advisory committee, and that committee is made up of therapists, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. So I reached out to them and asked this question, and so much of this is so wonderful. Again, to just be able to have these types of conversations. The first way that companies can support their employees is by high quality healthcare coverage. Even really high quality coverage has limited mental health access or super high deductibles that are separate from other coverage. So employers ensuring that they understand the coverage of the plans that they offer, and then also just educating and touching base with the staff regarding any services. I think that that's the first step. The second step is providing seminars or even informal lunch and learns around wellness topics that can help those who are otherwise sort of pressed for time by offering a lunch and learn, a 30, 45-minute session, or even organizing things like office-sponsored yoga or an afternoon run club. Physical activity and getting outside is directly connected to better mental health outcomes. And some companies just informally do like a one-time a month yoga or an informal early afternoon or like short run walk. Let your folks out, 30 minutes early before the day is done and go on a walk. Encouraging employees to use their PTO rather than making it seem like a luxury. I think that grind culture can become really problematic. And then embracing flex time, generally just ditching rigidity and moving towards, for example, I'm a high school educator, and during my lunch period is when I do my counseling. So I do all of my therapy via Zoom. And just knowing that my employer is supportive and is totally cool with me closing my blind and doing my thing is really lovely. And so I think that that's another thing that can be incredibly helpful when it comes to supporting employees.
Very good.
Joe and I talk about the grind,
the grind.
almost daily.
Yeah. It is a culture for sure.
Yes. Mm-hmm. With talking about the stress of work and, even just the human interaction, how has 33 Forever, how would you, feel the pandemic has impacted corporate America just because of, working from home Monday through Friday instead of going into the office and having off-the-wall water cooler conversations, cups of coffee, things like that? Is there a larger impact on the mental health being, for lack of a better term, secluded working from home over the past couple of years?
Yeah, it's a good question. We know that the pandemic has impacted mental health. It's no surprise to anyone that we're in a critical health crisis. And if you aren't personally impacted by issues surrounding mental health, you certainly know someone who is. Every 40 seconds, someone takes their life. And currently, this is the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 34. So our young workforce and our kids are the most at risk. And we know that the loneliness that's come from isolation has caused an uptick in anxiety, depression. And we know that depression and anxiety affect daily functioning, right? So it's something that work from home and the flexibility that it's created has been an absolute gift for some people. And for others, it's been profoundly lonely. And the sense of community that used to be at work has certainly been diminished.
Any suggestions on how to help combat that?
Yeah, I think it's complicated, right? Because the idea that work has to be all or nothing, meaning all work from home or all in person, I think is a little bit too black and white. I think there's nuance to it. And I think hearing people's thoughts and finding intentional ways to implement return to the office, maybe if it's like one day work from home or more where possible, I think just promoting flexibility where you can and allowing for your employees to feel empowered to manage life's demands in a way that doesn't feel like they have to be terrified about what's going to happen with their job. My husband is currently working from home, and they do water cooler Zoom breakout sessions, but are doing a week in office in the next couple of weeks just to sort of reconnect. And his company has done a good job, I think, not always focusing on productivity, but basically if your hours are and your numbers are hit, then, giving him that sort of flexibility. I think another thing that employers can do is really promoting asking how people are doing and really mean it. Self-assessment tools that are given frequently, free clinical screenings and referrals when appropriate. I think that encouraging sort of that water cooler talk, finding ways to get different teams to, whether it be an outing or a happy hour, dry or not. I think that these are things that employers or companies can do that are helpful, and trusting your workers, right? Not requiring doctor's notes to use sick days, trust that people are actually sick and that mental health days should qualify. I know for myself, I've taken a day off and haven't gone to the doctor that day, but I most certainly had flu symptoms. And the last thing is just the way that we're speaking. I've heard so many adults and young people say, oh my gosh, I'm sorry I'm being so picky about this project. I'm so OCD, or, way more intense things like, making comments that, this person is moody. They're like, oh my God, they're like bipolar. Just the way in which we speak, our words do matter, and being more inclusive in our language is important. So educating staff that those things are harmful and hurtful. I've had people say, and I'm sure you've heard it too, like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to blow my brains out, or something really, really triggering and off-putting. And to me, it's damaging. It's hard for me to even say that on a podcast. And in life, it's hard for me to even articulate that sentence, because it's so awful for a person who has been touched by something like this. But for people who have not experienced it, it's a responsibility that we have to help create a safer space for people.
If just jumping on that subject that you just brought up about, being graphic, and maybe it's not even, maybe it's just flippant or, insensitive at the time. If you were in a conversation with somebody or in a setting where comments like that were made, how would you, I guess, address that, in a impactful and, meaningful way? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Well, for me, as a suicide loss survivor, it's very easy, I think, for me to say, that offends me, that is hurtful, please don't do that today or any other day. I don't have as much of an issue saying that's inappropriate. But I think for somebody like in an employer situation, I think before things start, almost like at a company-wide meeting, making a workshop or speaking to let's be healthier and happier and hear ways that staff can support each other, and talking about inclusive language in that moment in a preventative way allows for, then if you do hear that again in the workplace, saying, hey, I know you were at that presentation and that is just not best practices at our company, that doesn't align with our values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. That's very helpful. And, as you try and break down the walls about, topics that are, historically or normally not discussed, I think that it's really critical, from a company standpoint for certain, but from an individual standpoint as well. We're all out in the world, and, you could be using those, statements that, could negatively affect somebody or, offend somebody. And I think being the bigger person, and even if you haven't had that, terrible experience in your life, to call it out and be like, that's not appropriate. You never know where anybody is and at any time in their life. And, like you said at the beginning of the podcast with your sister, you never know where anybody is truly, and they could have a very good mask on. So calling it out, I think, is probably best practices as well. And if it's done in a respectful way.
I prefer to say calling somebody in
There you go.
In my high school. I teach American government and I teach global issues, which is a world current events class.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of calling somebody out, I always lean into this idea of calling somebody in. I'm calling you into the conversation to increase understanding, and therefore, hopefully, we all benefit that way.
And you just called me in for calling out.
I did.
Yeah.
But in a gentle, loving way.
Oh, no, I understand. Yeah. I think it was a good example, right?
Yep.
Sarah, I know people, for lack of a better term, may feel embarrassed, I guess, or they know they need help, but they don't want to ask their friends or their relatives. So, I know there's probably tons of resources on your website. Where else could our listeners go, if they're just looking for some resources, community groups in the area? I mean, where would they go to find information like that?
Yeah. So 33forever.life/resources has a robust list of self-assessments, information, direct links, support group options, sites to help you find a therapist that best fits your needs. My favorite on there is to go to Psychology Today, and you can use a filter. So I'm looking for a male therapist. I'm looking for somebody who specializes in eating disorders. I'm looking for somebody in the Columbus area close to New Albany. We're receiving messages daily, and we are linking individuals to the professionals. That is the ethical, responsible way to approach, again, being a family who has lost someone. We align ourselves with the experts. So we have a partnership currently with Nationwide Children's. We have a partnership with Akron Children's. We have a partnership with Ohio State Wexner. We have a partnership with NAMI and the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation. So we work alongside the pros to create an environment where people can connect with a story, can relate to the symptoms, and identify issues within themselves and go from there.
And I'm on the 33forever.life/resources page, and it is exceptionally robust. This is fantastic, Sarah. There's a lot of different resources depending on what you're struggling with to get help. This is great.
Thanks.
Sarah, there's other things that you want to get out from, 33 Forever side that we have not discussed yet?
Yeah, obviously I'm interested in answering anything. I do want to talk a little bit about my specific role as educational programming chair.
Okay.
So why I'm the educational programming chair is obviously because I'm in education, but it's one of the most rewarding parts of being within this organization.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing that I do is we conduct workshops to student groups all over the state. So we presented to all of Greek life at Miami, sororities and fraternities and mental health student groups at Ohio State, at Heidelberg, at UK, at Cincinnati. And during those workshops, we're covering warning signs for mental health issues. We're sharing curated lists of local resources that those young people can utilize that are specific to their university. And we've presented to high schools. We presented to employer groups. We presented to police force. We're all over the state, and the pandemic didn't stop us. We're doing Zoom with 150 young women who are asking questions about how to set boundaries in abusive relationships. And it's been really powerful. We know that by the time our kids, our young people are 13, 14, those symptoms, whether they be anxiety, depression, issues related to food, these symptoms are already going to be present in most. So I think that it's just a real pleasure and honor to be able to share Danny's story and touch lives. And so I want to make sure that everybody listening knows that if they'd like a presentation like that and they'd like to hear from 33, we'd love to talk to you. And also, I would just love for you guys to learn more about Danielle, and if you're feeling called to this, we have so many cool opportunities for people to get involved. 33 Forever Inc. is our Instagram, and 33 Forever is also on Facebook. We really feel like the way in which we share resources, we are very passionate about some of our events. We have a golf outing and a mental health awareness walk that we do every year. We'd love for you guys to learn more about. We have an internship program for college students, and our interns are superheroes. And moreover, just if you want to get on our volunteer list, right? If you want to be a part of our 33 Forever family and help fight stigma and reduce the, major mental health issues that we're seeing in the United States today, we want you to be on our team. So lots of good stuff going on, and we're just so excited about the future. The biggest thing that has, maybe touched my heart the most is we recently made a $150,000 donation to the Ohio State Wexner Behavioral Health Immediate Care Clinic. It's literally an urgent care just for mental health on Ohio State's campus. And Danny's name is on the waiting room. Her story is in the clinic. And we would love to have a model like that sort of middle in-between stage of inpatient versus, weekly therapy sessions. There's this gap in care, and 33 Forever every year is going to work to create a replicatable, duplicatable model for addressing that gap in care.
Very good and impressive. So, and you can hear the passion that you have for this, incredibly important, topic and, mission that 33 Forever has. So, we really appreciate that. And, if you could highlight one thing that you could leave all the listeners with about 33 Forever or just the topic in general, what would that be?
I think if I could send a message to any human altogether, it would be to lean into your vulnerability and your authenticity. And I think that everyone is better for it when we take off our masks, when we talk about the things that bring us joy and pain. I think that our humanity is benefited when we lean into each other in that way. And I think the more I'm vulnerable and authentic, ultimately, the more I'm working on my own healing. I mean, I wouldn't be in this position. I'm speaking about 33 Forever, but I would not be okay. I don't know that I'm always okay every day, every minute, but I lost my sister in a really tragic way. But I got on meds. I went to intensive trauma therapy every week for a year. I'm still in therapy every other week. I am doing the work. I meditate. I, exercise. I'm a yogi. I'm not this way, and I don't have this passion and exercise this resilience without doing the work. And I think I wouldn't feel better if I wasn't walking the talk of what we say at 33.
That's great advice, Sarah. Thank you so much for telling the story. Telling us what 33forever.life has to offer. And if anyone out there would like to get in touch with, donate, volunteer, just ask questions, the website is 33forever.life/contact. And just put your name, email address, and a quick message, and I'm sure Sarah and 33 Forever will get back to you as quickly as possible to help you out.
Absolutely. I also help manage our Instagram. So 33 Forever Inc., you can send me a direct message and I will hit you up. I'll be right back to you. So I am so honored and grateful to have these conversations, and I'm blown away by the level of interest and the depth of questioning, because companies like yours and questions like this will help change the mental health game.
Very good. Thanks so much for the time and the information. It's really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Absolutely.
This has been fantastic. Appreciate all the information and the assistance. Thank you for listening to The Industrial Lens. We will see you next time.